Graphing linear equations in slope-intercept form. We've talked about this on several occasions, and we talked about that slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m is defined as the slope and b is defined as the y-intercept. All right, the slope, we should note, is the number in front of x. It is the number in front of x. For example, if I asked you what the slope was, you would tell me m is equal to the number, not m is equal to the number times x. You would not do that. The y-intercept is the constant. It's the number without a variable, and it is always, or we always write it as a point. I want to be able to take that y-intercept and graph it. In other words, it looks like 0, b. It is an ordered pair. So we got some examples down here. Be sure to pause throughout the video if you need to kind of go back and see different examples, or to copy stuff down that you may need take a little bit more time to write. Alright, so our directions say to find the slope and the y-intercept of the graph of each linear function. So we know that slope is m and our y-intercept is b. So when we look here, we see y equals 3x minus 4. Slope is the number in front of x. Okay, slope is the number in front of x. B is the number, the constant. And in this case, you want to make sure that you take the sign that's in front of the number, because this is very important when you're trying to graph. You don't want to graph 0, a positive 4, because that's in a different quadrant if you look at a coordinate plane compared to 0, negative 4. There we go. Write it as a point. All right, let's look at the next example. Y equals 6.5x. I'm going to take the number in front of x, and that is my m value. Okay? Now, this one is a unique situation where I do not have, or it's not written for a y-intercept. But when you don't see a b here, this literally means plus 0. All right, so now that I physically see a 0 there, I can physically write a b value, or my ordered pair for b, which is 0, 0. And all that really tells me is that this line will pass through the origin. In our next example, y equals negative 1 over 3x plus 4, the number in front of x is negative, is not only negative, but it is a fraction. It is still a number. It is still it is still in front of x. So our slope is negative 1 over 3. And then our y-intercept is plus 4, so therefore we write 0, 4. See example A and C, two different points in different quadrants on a coordinate plane. Now that we know how to locate the slope and how to locate the y-intercept, we can use this information to graph. Example number 2 says, graph the equation y equals negative 2x plus 2. The first step is to mark the y-intercept. Mark the y-intercept. Now, what I would do if I were you is I would take this equation And the first thing that I would do is off to the side write what my slope is and write what the y-intercept is, just like they did in the for those examples above. So in this case, my b value is the constant, so it would be 0, 2. And since now I know where to put it on the graph, I can go ahead and mark that dot on the graph. The second step is to write the slope as a fraction. Okay, we have to remember that slope is rise over run. See, m is equal to rise over run. All right, so if that's the case, then I want to make sure that my slope looks like a fraction, so when I go to put it on the graph, I know what direction to go in. And by the way, rise is no more than up and down motion, and run is no more than your left and right motion. Okay, so if I'm looking at my problem here, it is the number in front of x. So that means my slope is m is equal to -2. And if I want to make it a fraction, and since it's a whole number, I put it over 1. That means I'm going to go up or down 2, and I'm going to go over to the left or to the right 1. The third step is to use the slope to create points. Use the slope to create points. All right? So what you want to do is always start at the y-intercept. And I already have it marked on my graph. So I'm going to start at the y-intercept. And you can either choose to go up or you can go down. Whichever one you choose is perfectly fine. I'm going to go up first. So you go up 2. 1, 2. Now be very careful about your left or right motion. In this case, I want to go to the left because to the left is going to ensure that my line, when I draw it, has a negative slope, because we can't forget about this negative sign that's in front of the slope. That tells me that my slope should be negative. My line should be decreasing from left to right. So then you keep going until you have marked all the points that you can mark on the graph. 1, 2, go over 1. Up 2, over 1. Up 2, over 1. All right, and we're not going to half do this thing now. We're going to do the other side as well. So now I'm starting back at the y-intercept, and I'm going to count down 2, over to the right 1. 1, 2, over to the right 1. 1, 2, over to the right 1. 1, 2, over to the right 1. Now, your line will come out to be perfectly right if you know how to tell where the slope is and if you know how to tell where the y-intercept is. And the other trick is to know how to graph the y-intercept, knowing that the y-intercept specifically, is on the y-axis. Okay? And then the last step you want to do is draw the line, because they gave you an equation for a line. It is not a line with just points. You physically have to draw the line to make it a line, pretty much. Okay? You should use your handy dandy rulers that we made in class. Those things were beautiful. Get some use out of them, because you can make much straighter lines than I can on this thing. All right, so that is graphing a equation. Taking the y-intercept, plotting it on the graph, and then taking the slope to adjust your movements to create the other points, and then drawing the line. This gives you a straight linear equation line with a particular function. Okay? Now let's go on over to the other page. We have more examples on that page as well. I may have to cut the video a little short. There may be a part 2, but we'll get there. Okay, graph each slope-intercept equation, excuse me, then identify the x-intercept or the 0. All right, so a couple of ways we can do this. We've learned how to plug in the zeros for y or x, finding the y or x-intercept, but we're not going to do that today. Why do all that hard work when we can let the graph do the work for us? All right, the first thing we need to do is put down the slope. And so we remember that the slope is the number in front of x. And because I'm graphing, I'm going to go ahead and write it as a fraction. Let me leave me a little bit more space here. 4 over 1. Okay, then we write the b. It is the constant, and make sure you take the sign in front of the constant and write it as a point, so you know where to put it on the graph. 0, negative 4. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. 0, negative 4 is here. Then my slope is rise over run. It told me to go up 4. And because it is positive, I'm going to the right 1. And then I keep going up 4, 2, 3, 4, over to the right 1. I like going up first because it's easier to tell whether to go to the left or to the right first by going up for some reason. All right, then I can start back at the y-intercept and go down 4 over to the right 1 because I want to make sure that I get all the possible points I can possibly get. There we go. And then once you have all the points that you can possibly graph, you draw your line. So I'm going to take my highlighter and I'm going to draw as straight as line as I can, which is not straight at all. So maybe I can undo that and try it again. Maybe starting from the bottom. It's better, but all right, you get the picture. Okay, now about the x-intercept, if we look at our graph here, let's put it in a different color so we can let's put it in green. Okay, if we look at the graph here, we can see where the line crosses the x-axis. Remember, this is your x-axis. It runs all the way across from left to right. And the only dot that's on the x-axis is right here. Okay, and we can put that point right here, 1, 0. That is the point that is on the x-axis, which is your x-intercept. Okay, let's try to get this problem in before I have to stop this recording. All right, the last example is y equals negative 1/2 x. So first we find the slope. It is the number in front of x, and it's already a fraction, and it's negative 1/2. Okay, and then we find the y-intercept. It is a positive 3, so our y-intercept is 0, 3. And that's where I start, 0, 3. And then our slope told us it rise 1, and I'm going to go to the left 2 because I have a negative slope. And I want to make sure that I'm going in the direction where the line will be decreasing from left to right. Go up 1 over 2. And you put as many dots as you possibly can. Okay, now that I got one direction, now you got to go in the other direction by starting at the y. Go over 1. Down 1 over 2, sorry. Down 1 over 2. Okay, now that you have all your lines, you can draw a line. I'm going to use my highlighter. You use your handy dandy ruler. Boop. Shout out to Jonna. In my 4th period class, she said I needed to liven it up a little bit, so I'm trying. And then finally, your y-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis, and that would be 0, 6. All right, so I'll continue on in the next video.